Okay, so you didn't start out as a marketing guy. You started out as a pencil pusher, a bean counter, a number guy. You started in finance, right?
Well, guilty. I mean, I started out in corporate finance
Right.
and administration. I got my master's in finance, but guilty as
And
charged.
so, like, what do you talk about uh, these days? I mean, the beginning of your career was a little bit ago, wasn't like last week. And so now, when you're coaching CMOs, like, what part of that experience and education in finance comes into helping them become, like indispensable and not just like marketing people?
I help them with the language of finance
Sure.
so they can speak with CFOs, CEOs, and board members in a way that will be receptive to those audiences. Is kind of like marketing. You have to know your audience and you have to speak their language so they kind of get where you're coming from
Right. Yeah.
versus marketing speak.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that then for a second on marketing speak, right? Uh, you're like 150 CMOs deep into your like advising and coaching experience, right? And so you see a lot of first time CMOs.
I do. Yeah.
What are some of like, give me one or two of the typical traps that a first time CMO, I don't mean like first time at like they just got a new job. I mean, they've come up the ranks and now they have reached CMO status at a company.
Okay.
It's their first gig as a CMO. What's like one or two of the traps that they tend to like fall into or walk into or run into that you like point out to them and say like, before you like do that, think about X.
One is being too tactical and reactive to what folks say they want. Could be sales, could be other functions that say, well, marketing should, everybody thinks they know what marketing is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to slow down and step back and see what things make sense. And you don't want to be on what I call the tactical treadmill where you're forever reacting to different things. You want to think
Yeah.
strategically about what are the few things that are going to move the bar in um, the KPIs and metrics that are important to the company. So slow down and think through some of that before you just start executing a lot of things.
Or start
That's one
spending.
trap. Hmm?
Or start spending.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
The
Fair
other
enough.
thing is don't spend a lot until you've got your value proposition and brand positioning locked in a way that's going to resonate with the target audiences that you want to influence.
Right.
And make sure you understand who your ideal customer profile really is before you start spending a lot of money on marketing. So do the strategy first
Right. And then the
before you
small
do a lot of
bets and then the big bets.
yes.
All right. Okay. So all CMOs, nearly all CMOs, right, are under pressure around ROI. Like, is marketing worth it and so on. But
Yeah.
probably none of them more than people on two extremes, right? The CMOs at startups, intense pressure,
Yeah.
especially if the startup isn't as funded as it should be or it needs to be. And then on the other end, the CMOs who work for companies that have just been bought or are owned by private equity,
Yeah.
right? It's like numbers, show me performance, very much private equity kind of world, right? So for the ones that are in private equity, right? Like how how do they connect like their metrics to something that their like PE owners are
Yeah.
going to connect with and care about?
Well, the most important metric to private equity firms is something called MOIC,
Mm-hmm.
multiples on invested capital. And they generally have a 3 to 7 year time frame
Right.
to grow companies, make them bigger, make them profitable, and sell them off or do an IPO.
Right.
So they've got, and usually the first year, they have an economic plan that they want to achieve.
Okay.
So with private equity, you have to understand there's some short-term pressures, and short-term pressures generally is pipeline and meaningful movement on a quarterly basis to demand gen and pipeline and new business. But then also, equally or more important financially are the long-term KPIs like net revenue retention and customer lifetime value and things that will drive profitability on a long-term basis. I was gonna make a very quick comment since you mentioned startups.
Yeah, sure.
With startups, the first thing they need to do is get product market fit
Hmm.
and get customers and get use cases. And that's what marketing's focused on, should be more than anything else in a startup. But by the time a company is acquired by private equity, they have customers. And so they need to worry about things like churn and long-term customer-led growth in addition to short-term. So I think the CEOs that are successful are able to balance brand, demand, and customer-led growth, all three.
All right. Now, um, I've interviewed you like 3 times now. This is the fourth. I've
Thank you.
interviewed 400 fractional CMOs, and right, and some number of like full-time CMOs,
Yeah.
and a lot of them talk about like aligning different teams in the company, or especially aligning marketing and sales. And when pressed, most of them have, you know, ideas but not experience. What's it really take to align two departments, marketing and anything else, marketing and finance, or marketing and sales?
Yeah. I'll start with marketing and sales. So
Sure.
you got to speak the same language. So
Hmm.
you got to fix the nomenclature first. And you have to define what good looks like. So you have to have, whether it's marketing and sales, marketing and finance, you have to pick KPIs and metrics that will show movement towards corporate goals and speak the same language in terms of, what is a lead? What is a campaign? And have service level agreements between marketing and sales that define lead quality and how much marketing is going to warm it up before they give it to sales in the case of hand raisers that want to be contacted. What's a hot lead versus not? And then if
Right.
something is a hot lead that is defined mutually by marketing and sales, how quickly is sales going to follow up on it?
Hmm.
But that's only a small part of the equation because 95% of the folks that come to your website are anonymous. They won't identify themselves and they won't fill out a contact us form. So you need to nurture the 95% that aren't ready to have a conversation yet.
Right.
And you need to understand who might be crowding your website and your competitor's website with intent information to figure out who the 5% might be in terms of the buying groups that are now looking at companies and products and services like yours, and have a really good communication between marketing and sales to help sales um, vet through who they should be contacting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift to talking about companies of different sizes. A little while ago, we talked about startups versus PE portfolio companies. And so you've coached at big companies and you've coached at
Some small,
startups.
but a lot of big ones. Yeah.
Right? A lot of big ones, some small ones. Right?
Yeah.
How does like the approach change, or how are the needs different for a
Yeah.
CMO at a startup and a CMO at a big company?
With startups, like I said before, the most important thing is to get product market fit.
Right.
You want to um, make sure that the products and services you're going out to market with, people care about, they're willing to pay for, and really match um, the um, the targeted customer firmographic that will really care about what you're selling. So startups need to do that. And once they do that and they have some customers, they need to get some case stories and proof cases and all that. So
Right.
generally when you're talking with a startup or a very early company that doesn't have a lot of customers yet, that's what the gig is going to be. With larger companies that already have customers and have product market fit, generally as they grow, they tend to have more alignment issues between marketing and sales, marketing and product, marketing and finance, or customer success. So it's fixing some of those alignment issues to get everybody moving in the same direction and making sure there's a clear understanding of who the ideal customer profile is that everybody should be targeting in an aligned way. And that's often an issue for big companies. You would think big companies are really clear about who they're targeting and who their ideal customer profile is. I've seen some billion-dollar companies that aren't. Or they're going after low-end customers, but their product isn't appropriate and doesn't give an experience that's a positive experience. So you then have issues with brand. Um, so a lot more alignment issues with bigger companies,
Right.
a lot of similar issues, but as companies get larger, they may have a bloated MarTech stack. They may
Mhm.
have a lot of dirty data if they've done a lot of acquisitions, multiple Salesforce instances that they have to fix.
Right.
And, getting people on the same page is a really important one. Does that help?
Yeah. All right. So let's imagine that I'm a CMO and I didn't come from a finance background. I put in the effort. I'm pretty comfortable talking financials now, right? I have the lingo. I understand like the priorities and stuff. What did I just unlock in my career?
You unlock the ability to communicate with other C-suite members like peers,
Yeah.
and for them to listen to what you're saying because they understand your language.
Which is
And for
their language
you, sorry,
because it's their language.
because it's their language, it's the language of business.
Right.
And more likely to view you as a strategic I mean, there are a lot of other things you need to do, but you'll be more likely to be thought of strategically, especially if you're proactive in thinking of strategy. Also, it's important with the C-suite and the board that the CMO should bring what's going on in the market. What are the market changes? Headwinds and tailwinds to meetings. So um, that helps as well.
Okay.
And also defining what marketing is today. What are the elements
Now,
of marketing that people need to understand? That needs to be reinforced with the C-suite.
okay, let's say that I'm a CMO between companies. We'll be very polite. Okay?
Okay.
I'm between companies. And someone comes to me with an offer to be an interim CMO. Like, is there any kind of advantage other than, getting a paycheck for a while, a few months, maybe as long as a year? Is there any advantage to me to like move into an interim CMO role?
Number one, it's really good experience. Number
Yeah.
two, it can be very rewarding. Number three, if you're looking for a full-time role, I'm not, but if you're looking for a full-time role, an interim role may be the avenue to get a full-time role if things
Right.
work out really well. And then both sides have done their due diligence and you're comfortable um, with a company. And fourth, it's experience you can put on your resume that shows what you've been doing while you've been in transition.
Right. All right.
So I
But
think it's good for a lot of reasons.
when you said it's rewarding, did you mean financially rewarding? Spiritually rewarding?
Um, I wasn't really thinking financially rewarding, even though it really is.
It's
I
interesting
would.
work.
It's really interesting work, and it gives
Yeah.
you variety, and it can be a lot of fun. I've actually had a lot of fun doing it, and you're not part of the political situation, so people generally listen to what you're saying because they're paying you for your work in a way
Right.
that's a little bit different than if you're an employee.
All right. Let me put you in a hypothetical. Okay. I'm a CMO, let's say, and I don't know exactly what's wrong, but I know I'm stuck. I don't seem to have interest outside my company to bring me on. I don't seem to have interest inside my company to like facilitate what I'm doing. What's the first thing you ask to help figure out why I'm stuck?
Start to talk about communication style, how you're developing cross-functional relationships,
Mm-hmm.
um, what some of the successes are and what you think is holding you back. Is it something that is more relationship and communication style, oriented, or is this company just not the best fit for you
Right.
in terms of
Sometimes it's
uh,
not who you are or what you are, it's where you are.
it can be, yeah, and
Yeah.
how people perceive marketing. Everybody thinks they're a marketer.
Yeah.
And some people think marketing is a coin operated demand engine or arts and crafts or sales support. And maybe what folks want the head of marketing to do with this company isn't really very strategic or consistent with where you want to be. So you have to think through that um, part of it. But then also, who are the people you're interacting with? Who is the C suite? And what are the relationships? And what have you done to build those relationships?
Okay.
Probably start
Another
there.
hypothetical. Okay. So for this hypothetical, I'm starting a new job as a CMO tomorrow. You're the frameworks guy, Mr. Hundreds and Hundreds of Frameworks, right? What framework would you tell me to get familiar with and try to put in place first? It's like something in the first 30 days that I would get some benefit out of. What's your favorite?
The first 30 days, I would do a lot of listening. It's not necessarily a framework, but I would ask your people and also the C suite and your peers, what are you most proud of?
Right.
What are the accomplishments? What's worked really well? And let them talk about that. And then ask, well, are there some gaps? If you had three wishes, what would they be? And I would not only ask the marketing folks to get to know them and ask them those questions, I would also ask your functional peers and the CEO and the CFO. What's working well? What do you think is not working or could work better?
Right.
So the first month I would spend getting to know people, not coming on, whether you're full time or fractional, not coming on like a ton of bricks, like you're coming on with the answers, but build relationships because that's the bedrock and foundation to make changes and moves after that.
Okay. You're another hypothetical. You're on day one of working with the CMO as an advisor or a coach, right?
Yeah.
And you see that it's very clear this CMO, fantastic at execution. And this CMO, almost no relationship with the CEO. What do you do?
I try to find out why
Yeah.
and learn what the CEO is like and what her or his um, desires are and what's driving them, especially at a private equity funded company, what pressures the
Right.
CEO is under, because they're under a lot of pressures with the board too. So what are they trying to accomplish? What do they think of marketing? And the first question is the company and the CEO a good fit for the CMO? They took the job, but did they do a lot of due diligence before they took the job? And assuming it is, you know, how do you develop a relationship with the CEO? Getting FaceTime, breaking bread, and understanding what they're looking for. So I would lean into the relationship aspects and try to figure out what's going on.
Okay. Some people, marketing, rock and roll. For you, clearly, knowing you from before, marketing, some kind of mixed classical and some jazz. How do they mix up? What gets priority when? When is it like very structured and when does it have to be improvisational?
When it makes sense. So
So when does it make
marketing,
sense?
well, I'd like to keep flexibility. So marketing really is the combination of creative breakthrough, emotional connection with customers and prospects, which is
Sure.
critical, but also and that's what I call the jazz, or the creative, and also the analytical, the process management, the continuous improvement. And I believe CMOs really need to be general managers that are good at both. When both are in line continuously, you have to break through to your um,
Right.
prospects and customers with the right messaging and the right customer experience, creating remarkable customer experiences. And if you just take that, that also results in long-term growth and your future financial results. So I'm not sure how to answer that other than to say both and always.
Fair enough. All right then. Okay, so you were in marketing for decades, so you've seen your fair share of downturns in our economy or downturns
Yeah.
in an industry, right?
Yep.
And uh, the standard sort of reflexive move in any downturn is to cut and cut back, especially in marketing.
Right.
And a lot of CMOs, they're like to preserve what they think is sort of their like position and reputation will cut. But you're not typically in favor of that. Yes, no.
I yes and no. I believe in passing people in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
When there are economic headwinds, first of all, I think CMOs need to be proactive about cutting. I don't think they should wait to be asked to cut things that make sense to cut. So things like too many agencies, if you're a very global
Right.
company and you don't have brand consistency between the agencies, or oftentimes you can cut there. Oftentimes you've got, you know, you can get rid of 70% of your content because it's not relevant to the customer and prospect experience. Often companies have a bloated MarTech stack because they've gone after a lot of shiny objects that
Right.
aren't necessarily helping them. So those are some key areas you can cut, and there's some others. But I also think you should invest in things that impact the customer, that will drive customer-led growth, that'll create a more remarkable customer experience. Number one. Also, I think you should invest in intent information to understand which customers, which prospects are crowding your website and your competitors. So you can bifurcate between the 95% you should be nurturing because they're not even ready to buy anything, and the 5% that are in market because most of these people are anonymous. So I think if you invest in some of the things that are going to result in longer term customer growth and a more efficient demand process, but cut the things that are fat in your agencies or your content or your MarTech stack, I think there's a rebalancing. And uh, I believe companies that do that, that not only cut, but invest in areas can uh, bypass their competitors when the economy gets better. So I'm for rebalancing, not just indiscriminate cutting. If you just cut indiscriminately, you're going to pay when the economy gets better, and you're going to have to rebuild everything, which
Right.
doesn't make sense.
Okay, so I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, almost 400 CMOs over the last couple of years.
It's a
Um,
lot.
for whatever reason, you are the only one that I know that gets called in by private equity companies to look for red flags in a deal on the marketing side of that deal. Like, I don't even know what a red flag would be in a deal like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're like inflating some kind of number, I guess, or maybe, but like, what are like a couple of red flags that you'd go looking for to make sure that they're not there? And you can advise your private equity company, go ahead, this looks solid.
Number one is the customer base. Are they open to the deal? How would they react to the deal? Are you going to have a lot of customer attrition when the deal's done because they don't like putting these companies together, or they don't see the value, or just the customer bases don't gel? So
Right.
you could call that a marketing or a customer or a sales issue. I don't know. It's a business issue. But really understanding and doing some research on how customers on both sides will react to this deal and this combination. Because if you start to get a lot of customer attrition, that's going to
Right.
kill the value in the deal.
Yeah.
So that would be probably the first thing. Another is cultures. Are the cultures compatible, or are they very incompatible? How are you going to combine these companies? Are people going to work together collaboratively? So that's, working with some of the HR folks and marketing, but really understanding the cultural differences. And then I've also seen issues with products. Is the company selling some vaporware? You know, do the products really do what they say they're going to do? And to make that happen, you have to do some due diligence on the product side to, and so product marketing would be involved, but really understanding if the products have real value and what you're trying to get out of the combination of buying this company. You're trying to increase your customer base, you're trying to get more product diversity,
Right.
are you trying to get some capabilities you don't have now to add to your value proposition? And then I think the last thing, and these aren't all marketing, but they're important in M&A, is what kind of tech debt are you going to be bringing on board? How consistent are the value propositions of the products? Are you going to be able to combine them, or will it take years and years to work through the tech debt to really make this combination productive from a product standpoint as well? Those are a
All right.
few.
Finish this thought for me. It's a two-parter. Junior or new CMOs are too focused on lead gen. Midterm, middle of career CMOs are too focused on what?
Maybe brand without explaining the benefits of brand. Things like, so for example, if you just talk about brand, we need to improve our brand, we need to invest in brand,
Mm-hmm.
people may not listen as much as, hey, you know, uh, our brand means we'll have a better win loss ratio. We'll have a lot more at bats with our sales
Right.
folks, and we'll be considered a lot more where we may be looked over, So it's how you translate things. But some marketing folks, especially if they've only had a communications background, may emphasize brand at the expense of demand and customer led growth. And I think to be a holistic strategic marketer, you really need to consider all three things and how they work together.
Okay, here's part two. So we junior or new CMOs too focused on lead gen. Mid career CMOs too focused on brand, or are focused on brand. Senior CMOs, what are they focusing on?
Those that transition to be good strategists and cross functional business executives are the ones I see as more successful and indispensable.
Right. Okay.
Well, some people develop earlier in their careers
Yeah.
and are more holistic, but the catch is only focusing on demand. A lot of companies over rotate on demand. But what happens if you bring on a lot of prospects, a lot of new customers, but they don't fit your ICP, and then you start to have a lot of churn, and that hurts your brand. So you have to think more strategically than just demand.
Okay. So another hypothetical. I'm a CMO. I've looked at my MarTech stack. I've thought, damn, that is messy. I want to clean it up without breaking it. Where do you even start?
When I talk to people about what my value is, it's really three things. It's strategy, leadership, and my network. If there's a lot of complex gyrations with the MarTech stack, I'll probably bring in one of the experts in my network to help sort through that and help
Mm-hmm.
the company through that. There are a lot of companies with those issues.
Right.
And to untangle that, you really have to see where the value is and how the pieces fit together. So you don't want to just kill it all. I mean, it's kind of a little bit like Humpty Dumpty. You want to see, which pieces integrate with each other and what pieces really provide value. And that's something I can be dangerous on, but I don't do all the fingers and toes to work through that. If that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah. Another hypothetical. You meet me. I am clearly an indispensable CMO. Describe me.
You understand that marketing is a lot more than demand gen. You understand the benefits of brand and customer led growth. You understand how what marketing does impacts the company and the corporate goals and finance. You can help the C suite through strategy sessions by helping them decide what segments to go after. You have a really well defined ideal customer profile. and you're really good at getting the other functions on board and helping them. And you find ways to help sales, product, customer success, finance, things you give them ideas that would help them be more successful as well.
Right.
So you're viewed at as a strategic leader that is really a business person rather than just a marketing functional leader.
Right. All right. Last question. I'll let you go.
Another hypothetical.
I love my hypotheticals. I'm in love with my
I've
hypotheticals.
noticed,
Right?
dude.
So, okay. So you've come across a CMO who wants like advice or mentorship,
Yeah,
and you start doing your conversations, and you realize this person treats marketing like it's a cost center, right? And those people exist. There are
yeah,
CMOs who
yeah.
think this is they're probably not like career marketing people, that they're doing a marketing rotation,
Right.
right? Someone is like moving them around in different roles, so they get some insight into production, some insight into finance, some insight into, and now they're in marketing, and they look at it as a cost center, right? What's one sort of push or challenge, or like challenging idea you want to put in their head to make them rethink marketing as a cost center?
I would teach them how to do a business case
Yeah,
for the investments that they want in marketing and how to attach what they want to get out of the investment. And then how to communicate, how to tell the story of why it's important.
that easy.
Not necessarily that easy. It may take some time. If they don't have any grounding in finance,
Simple but
maybe
not easy.
depends on the personality. You
Yeah,
know, they have to be willing to listen. And if they don't have a backing in finance, I can help them with some financial
right.
concepts that will help them communicate their ideas so they're accepted better by the CEO and the CFO.
Yeah,
I've taught classes on doing that at the grad level. Actually, how you communicate with CFOs and CEOs to get your programs approved if you're a senior marketing person,
right. All
which
right.
was fun.
All right. I am all out of questions. I think we did like almost 20.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah, great
Thanks.
to hear you again.
Appreciate it. Bye.